Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at Oz, a fantasy role-playing setting by Andrew Kolb. It says that it's 5e compatible right here, but really the stats are extremely minimalistic and it would work very well with any edition of D&D, especially old school D&D, which is definitely inspired by. This is actually the sequel to Andrew Kolb's previous fantasy setting, Neverland, which I have reviewed previously. This is a really, really great book, and this continues right on in that tradition. Let's look at our back cover right here. It says that adventure is just a trip down the yellow brick road. The multi-talented author and illustrator of Neverland returns with another beautiful RPG setting book in Oz. While many have traveled with Dorothy Gale to the world of Oz, there is so much more to explore. But know this, there is more to the land and its inhabitants than the rumors might suggest. Appearances can be deceiving. And like any good metalsmith will tell you, the only way to tell a gold bar from a yellow brick is to hit it with a hammer. So this is a point crawl system. Players can explore an urban setting full of secrets to discover via underground trains and a monorail that loops around all 4 districts of Oz. With different districts to explore, factions to join, and questions to ask, what happened to the slippers anyway, players can escape to the land over the rainbow for hours on end. The production design of this is just as gorgeous as it was in Neverland. Beautiful hardback design. It's got foil printing on the front right here. You can see it's kind of shiny. All of the pages within have this slightly glossy look. It's not overly done, but it helps the blacks really pop out. Incredibly crisp printing. I believe it is stitch bound, and it is just beautiful all around. It definitely opens flat when you open it up in the middle like that. As well, great attention has been paid to the design of each page. Everything is done in a control panel format. There's just so much work and care put into how this thing looks and how it functions. As usual, I will put links in the description below for where you can pick this up in PDF or in print form. The print copy is remarkably inexpensive, kind of like Neverland. When Neverland came out, my mind was blown by the fact that it was only like $20 or $25 for the hardback. This one is $35, so a little bit more expensive. I believe it is a bit longer than Neverland, so that makes sense, but still remarkably cheap given what you are getting here. A book of this quality would easily be $50 from other publishers. Before we jump into the contents though, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Into the AM and their series of fantasy and sci-fi themed t-shirts. These are the only t-shirts I've ever worn where random strangers will compliment me on them on the street. I'll just be walking through a parking lot and a random guy will walk by and be like, man, nice shirt, which is really cool. It's never happened to me before. These shirts are really comfortable and they're really affordable too. There's lots of great deals over on their web store. And if you use my link in the description below, you can get an additional 10% off of the entire store. The one I'm wearing right now is one of my favorite designs. It would look really good if you were running some sort of Planescape or Spelljammer type campaign. Check out the link below, and thanks again to Into the AM. All right, let's see what we get inside Oz. We have a giant map right here on the inside cover. End papers are being used, which is great. There's actually lots of different copies of this map spread throughout the book, and it's done in different ways to give you different information. One of the problems here is that the map does kind of go all the way down into that crack, so it's a little bit hard to read, but there are maps later on that help you with that. Oz is divided into these 4 quadrants. I believe this is faithful to the books. I haven't really read the books. Of course, I've seen the movie. I heard maybe 1 or 2 of the books on audio tape when I was a kid, but it's a little bit vague in my head. So this is a bit of a refresher. So we have Quadling, Munchkin, Gillikin, and Winky, which is these 3 different regions of Oz. And in this book, at least, most of this is taken up by a giant city, the city of Oz, which is all the way through here, with the Emerald City, kind of like the Emerald Spire or Tower in the very center of it, where the administration of the city lives. But most of the time, you'll be traveling through this city, having urban encounters. If you want to venture out into the wilds, you can do that, and there is a different system for exploring those places. At the back of the book, we actually get the same map again, but it is zoomed in a little bit, so you get a better sense of how things are related to each other. And you could even see how all the roads are laid out in case you want to use that. There's also a fold-out map right here. So you can pull the whole thing out. If you want an even larger map, that's all done in color. And on the opposite side, you have this again, where it's zoomed out a little bit further. So whichever map you want to use, you have plenty of options. One thing I really like is how there is a kind of a resource here at the back for complementary resources. So ideas that he may have drawn from or that may fit well with Oz. Some of these are classic OSR books. For example, Magical Industrial Revolution by Scripples, On Downtime and Demeaned by Hack and Slash Publishing. I've done reviews of both of those. Stygian Library, did a review of that as well, and Undying Sands. So yeah, a lot of these I've done reviews of, as well as Kingdoms in Warfare and Inspirals, which I'm not familiar with. But you can definitely see that the modern OSR was a source of inspiration here for this book, and that it's going to mesh well with the kinds of things that you'll find in here. Here is our table of contents on the inside here. Contains tons of information. It's mostly composed of descriptions of the land and of the different locations you can meet, but there is a large bestiary in here, as well as a big resource section for helping you randomly generate other stuff that you might need. The different sections here are actually color-coded on the edges, which help you find things even faster. One of the criticisms that I have of the book, and it's not a huge deal, it's just that in a lot of cases the font is very small, so you can still read it, but I think it could be a little bit bigger and a little bit easier to read. But chapter 1 is mostly just about the world, where it just goes over what Oz is and the setup that the world is in when you begin the game, as well as ways that you can customize that. So what's going on? We have all of our major personalities right here, and I believe most of these are drawn from the books. And they can be reconfigured in different ways. These are the main characters that are going to be the power players in Oz. Some of them might be trying to rule different districts, and you can use them in your intrigues and machinations. Lots of different factions here that you can use for faction play against each other, and a timeline of Oz to keep you caught up with roughly what is going on. Oz does seem a little bit more modern than I remember it being in the books. It feels like a kind of a 1920s look to it, kind of Art Deco, in terms of like how all the characters are dressed and what they look like and so on. And that just fits with Andrew Kolb's drawing style, because not only did he write the whole book, he also laid the whole thing out and he did all of the illustrations. So this is a one-man show. A section here on how it works and the rulers of Oz. You are expected to set up the initial political configuration of Oz before the game begins. And he shows you all sorts of ways that you can do that with some very solid guidelines. So which characters do you want to be ruling? What magic items do you want them to have? And their relationship to one another and so on. That can all be customized pretty easily. It is a point crawl, so you're going to be moving from district to district inside the city, solving problems, fighting bad guys, investigating crimes, and so forth. And has rules here for how you're going to do that point crawl travel. And there's local crawl travel. That means more like a dungeon crawl where you're zooming into one particular street or a particular building. And there are resources later on in the book to help you generate that more specifically if you want the actual room layout or street layout of an area. And not only are you going to be walking from place to place, there are trains, there are above ground monorails, there are subways beneath the surface that can get you around the city even faster. Some background of Oz and how the whole region is set up. It's built by fairies. There's a deadly desert surrounding it that prevents invasions, basically. Where the Yellow Brick Road came from, the landscape and the climate. Magic in Oz right now is currently heavily restricted by its ruler, Ozma. And so I suppose wizards are going to be rare. And if you have wizards in your party, then they're probably going to have to get permission from the rulers in order to use their magic. Which, if you're the GM, that's not going to be too big of a deal. There's a whole section here on crime and punishment that I quite like, because there's not just one trial system for Oz. There's all sorts of strange, arcane ways of determining someone's guilt, and that can make these sorts of trials a lot more interesting if you change it up from time to time. You can have trials by combat where you're boxing each other. There could be compurgation, where the idea is that you have a limited amount of time to find a number of citizens that believe that you're innocent. It could be a large number of citizens if it's a very serious crime. So you have to run around the city kind of doing a PR campaign. Lots of different fun ideas. We have rules here for searching a local neighborhood. There's rules for chase sequences and even for map making right here, where you can generate the interior room structure and layout of a building by dropping dice and create a street map overview by, for example, if you're searching this area, you're basically writing the word searching using different streets. So you write these as streets and they kind of come together to make a map. Reminds me a lot of a kind of compressed version of some early D&D books like Vornheim. We have a section on intermissions here. Intermissions are basically downtime. And there's a whole bunch of different activities you can do, like mending, partying, promotions, recruitments, relaxing, research, more research for more dangerous stuff, retail, risk-taking, thieving, training, and working, each of which has a little mini system underneath here. So for example, if you wanted to do some research, you could roll a d4 3 times and discover that it's going to take 2 weeks, and the quality is going to be reliable and offers a lead, and the cost might be 1 gold piece if you're lucky. And then you could possibly make a check to move one of these up or down one slot if you want to adjust what you're going to be finding, if your character is skilled enough. Our next section is the cast. This is the bestiary. of all of the different types of creatures from Oz. I assume that most of these are drawn from the books. I'm not familiar with most of them. We've got the ABC Serpent, a giant literary sea monster that you can fight. Lots of different kinds of animals, especially major characters. We got Button Bright. He's one of the big NPCs. The little crown symbol shows that they are important. Most of their special abilities are combat related, so it doesn't have the deep weirdness of something like Fire on the Velvet Horizon. It's quite functional though. The stats are pretty minimal. We just have hit dice, hit points, armor, which is going to be your AC. Their speed has 3 saves right here, basically a high save, a mid save, and a low save. The idea here being is that when you do an effect on this creature and they're probably going to save, you decide whether they would be great, middle of the road, or bad at it and just use the appropriate save. So it just sort of skips the whole normal D&D save system. We have all their attacks and their special abilities. One interesting thing is that especially when you come to some really powerful NPCs, they actually have phases. So as you fight them, they kind of morph into their final forms, which is kind of fun. It reminds me a little bit of some video games, and it adds some tactical interest to it. We have giants here and gargoyles. Gargoyles have sign language, and there's actually a whole picture right here of different basic signs that the gargoyles might use that you could add on to if you wanted to. So here's an example of a powerful NPC, Glinda, who is the good lich of the south. There's no witches anymore. They're all liches instead. So for example, when she goes into her final form, here we go, phase change. After losing all phase 1 HP, Glinda's appearance cracks and shatters to reveal a ruby skeleton and transitions into phase 2. And then all previous effects go away and you have to fight her in her new form where she is much more powerful as a kind of ruby skeleton lich. And that's true with all of the witches are now skeleton liches with a particular color associated with them. You got hippogriffs, you've got the hungry tiger, jackdaws. We got Jack Pumpkinhead, who has magic seeds that can control people's minds if they happen to eat them. So there is some interesting tactical things outside of combat that you can do, although I think that's a little bit less of the focus. Locasta is the good lich of the north. Mombi is the bedlam. I assume if you are familiar with the Oz mythos and you're up on those books, you're going to find tons of Easter eggs in here, because I do get the sense that this was very carefully researched. Although I don't think it was kept strictly to the books, it definitely interprets it in its own way, especially since the way it is, it feels like it's more modernized. For example, we have OZ Ultra, which is a secret operation being run by Ozma in order to eliminate magic or restrict magic throughout Oz. The Patchwork Girl, we have Polychrome, the Porcelain Folk, Rattlesnakes, Sand Elementals, the Sawhorse. We have Seedlings, Shaggy Man, This, TikTok, Tinners, Unicorns, Utensians, which are just utensils. We have the Woodsman, or the Tin Woodsman. Yeah, the Tin Woodsman, the famous one from the movie. We have Verdella, the Wicked Lich of the West. The Watcher Folk, Winged Monkeys, of course. Wheelers, people with wheels for hands who go zooming around. And the Zoominati, who's some sort of secret organization. The next big chapter is The Land. This is where we get into all of the different districts and what is in them. And the layout is again, really excellent. We have 2 different maps here so that you can see clearly how different things are laid out. Quick area reference where every single location here has like a 1-sentence description along with what page to flip to. So there is lots of references throughout this. You can find what you need right when you need it. So we start off with the train routes. This is the overground E line. There's a abstracted version of how it connects up to the different districts right there, which is really nice. It looks like that famous London Underground map. And there is lots of random tables for each of these 2-page spreads to help you generate stuff. For example, area effects that are happening nearby, what encounters are there, what is the mood of people nearby, anything that you might need, along with first impressions and names of people that are going to be in that area. Important locations get full-on maps. For example, the Emerald Citadel here. If you're actually going to be dungeon crawling, I suppose, through this, then you actually have a map here that you can use, along with detailed descriptions of what's going to be in every one of those rooms. We have Lake Quad here, and the lake is a little bit like these wilderness areas on the edges in that there is a separate system for exploring it. Basically, the exploration system is that you're going to be using D4s, and you're going to be adding one D4 after another to see what encounters you get to. So it'll be a little bit randomized as you push deeper and deeper into one of these wilderness zones. And it's probably going to get more dangerous the deeper you go. If you get far enough, then you can get to the really crazy stuff at the end. A typical city district is laid out something like this. We got Emerald View, encounters, area effects, some creatures and NPCs that might be there. We have an abstracted map right here where these black lines tell you which districts are adjacent to it that you can travel to. The green stuff being the lake and a river that's nearby. So you can just see how that's laid out. And then over here for every district, we have navigation, events, worldlings, and secrets. So as you go down this way, they become harder to find and they're rarer, so to speak. And same thing as you go this way. So Community Hill would be the most obvious thing that you would find there, along with maybe Mansion Road, the croquet matches, and golf tournaments. But when you get all the way down to this side over here, you have things like Rival Neighbors, the Punctual Physician, Double Dealing Thief, and the Zuminati Catacombs, which would be the rarest and hardest thing to find. Just giving you lots of different options, 16 different things that you can encounter even in just one district. That's not when you include all of these random tables to tweak things even more. And we get that structure for each of the districts. There's always a mini map over on one side, so you can see exactly where it is, how it's related to the other districts, and how it is connected up to local monorail and underground subway lines. Here we have one of the wilderness areas, the Forest of the Winged Monkeys. And again, it's designed the same way that the lake was, where you can randomly roll to move further and further through this series of encounters. It's a little bit like the system in the Labyrinth adventure game that I worked on, where there's all of these encounters already planned for you, but you're not necessarily going to see all of them. We have layout for some important locations. Each of these little areas sticking out into a wilderness is like its own dungeon, so to speak. It's a tower of some sort usually, and there is a map for exploring it. Sometimes when you encounter locations in one of these wilderness areas, it's not just a paragraph description. It'll actually refer you to a later page. For example, here, the Farmhouse Ruins or the Unicorn Grove, where there'll be more details that you can draw from when running that as an encounter. Other notable locations include the Sapphire Castle, Hopper and Horner Mountain, the Porcelain Village, the Ruby Castle, Suntop Mountain, the Truth Pond, and the Tin Keep. Chapter 4 is all of your resources, and boy, is it packed with stuff. We have all of the Relics of Oz, these major powerful magic items, and some of them are extremely powerful that your players can discover. For example, the Magic Fan, if you wave it, you can blow away entire armies. But of course, it's just a fan, which means it could be stolen by someone else. So just because the players have a lot of power doesn't mean it can't be used against them. We have a lot of basic layouts for buildings that you can just steal and drop directly into the game. For example, a bank or a factory, a mansion, a lodge, a laboratory, a parade. It has a parade that's laid out because parades are just a thing in Oz and you got to have one set up for you. There's different types of train stations. You have a Watcherfolk station, a Wogglegology, however you say that, center. And we start getting into things like generating adventures for guilds that are secretive, adventures for the Objectionists or the Outfit or the Oz Ultra. The different factions all have adventures that are tied to them directly. We have different types of animals. Bring me Oscar Diggs glasses or the Shaggy Man's coat, if you just want a magic item that you have to capture. Ceremonies, character traits. There are different types of creatures, crowds. There's a random table for crowds because it's a packed city. So why not have something like that? Weird exhibits you can find at museums, different locations you can just drop into your map. Lodging events for when you're staying in a particular place. A D100 table for weird Oz loot that you can pick up. Magical occurrences, lots of different NPCs, plot hooks, objects, relics. We have more rumors here. How many rumors? 100. Why not? Some secrets that are environmental or just for individuals. Street quirks, so things that are going wrong nearby, where things are, what year is it? All of this stuff is just going to make the world of Oz feel incredibly rich and alive. You can generate stuff whenever you need it, and it's going to make your prep much, much easier. Because when you combine this with all of the rich ideas on every page for all those different districts, you are just never going to run out of ideas. At the back, there's this really fun stuff where there is a sketchbook where the author talks to you about how he designed the book, including all of these concept art for the different characters as he worked on them, how he did the layout, all of this really great stuff. I wish more designers would do things like this. It's so great to see in their heads what they were thinking as they were designing the book. There's a number of pre-created character sheets at the back here for like an angry turtle, clockwork boxer, coal mine canary, gentle blacksmith, if you just want to grab some strange Oz characters and throw your players directly into the game. As you can see, it's basically designed off of the 5th edition rule set, but it's kept pretty minimal. And as I mentioned before, OSR stuff is going to work just fine. A nice summary page of references at the back here for all of the really important stuff to get you up to speed, and rumors, names for the different districts, just to make things even faster for you. So that is it for Oz. It is a absolutely beautiful book, incredibly well put together. It has this emerald bookmark right here, which is really cool too. As usual, I'll put links in the description below for where you can pick it up for yourself. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.